I'm excited because the gentleman who is my guest tonight, when I first heard him, it was an album called Wanderlust, and as soon as I heard that album, that was it. I was hooked right away. And I started looking into his past and following him all into the future as far as his music and what he's been doing. So it's a real pleasure to introduce my guest, Mr. Mike Mainieri. Thank you for joining me, Mike. How's it going?
It's going great.
That's great.
Nice to be here.
Yep.
And,
yeah.
Considering I feel like I've been in a penitentiary for 7 months, 8 months.
Yeah, it's going on almost a year, I think, in March.
Yeah, but other than that, it's been really been okay. With my wife and youngest daughter and our 2 dogs, and we're in the heart of New York City, so we're pretty lucky.
Oh, that's good, man.
In that respect.
Are you Upper West Side?
I am. I'm 72nd in Amsterdam.
Okay. And you've got a coffee place downstairs from you, right? Did you tell me that the other day?
I do. It's not mine, of course, but that was. Yeah. I think that was the original plan, that we were going to meet there and do this interview.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
perhaps I'm thinking of somebody else, but that's where we usually meet.
Yeah. No, that's cool. Well, I'll just tell my little story here real quick, and then we just want to talk about this origin and the evolution of Steps, which became Steps Ahead. It is true. So I went to the Syracuse University record store. They used to have a house called Spectrum Records. It was actually in an old house, and they had all kinds of great stuff. And of course, it was vinyl, whatever year it came out. I got it right away, like 79, 80, 81, somewhere in there. It's Wanderlust.
Yeah. Wanderlust, I think, came out in 81.
Okay.
80, 81. I think it was 81.
Yeah, so I'm looking, and I'm looking at oh, man, because I'd heard a cut on the radio. So I go over there, and they had it. I said, Peter's on there. And I'd already known Peter for about 10 years at that point. We met when we were kids, basically. And Marcus, Tony Levin, Michael Brecker, one of my heroes, of course, and the others, Don Grolnick, I think, too. And so I picked it up. I came home, and I wore it out. I mean, seriously, I have quite a few albums that I've worn out. I've had to buy a second copy. Then CDs came out, then digital. So, but yeah, man. So that's how I got introduced to you. And I really, I love just everything you've done. To me, I look at you and say, man, this guy's had a hell of a career. You've put out some beautiful music. You do production, composing, playing your butt off. And so tell me, if you don't mind, let's go back and talk about the origin of Steps. We have a lot of people who've been interested in learning about this. How did Steps come to be?
Well, it depends on how far back you want to go. When I think of it, it might be different than when most people like yourself.
I'm into anything. Album. Yeah.
Okay.
It's all good.
It kind of started in the late '60s.
Okay.
When I was living in Woodstock, I was a session musician, doing a lot of sessions in New York, and I had this big band. Like a jam band that would rehearse at the recording studios at night. Mm-hmm. And it was not by invitation only. It was just like anybody that wanted to show up would show up if they didn't have a session or a gig that night. So it started with Tony Levin and Warren Bernhardt, and Donald McDonald was the drummer.
Oh, wow.
And 3 or 4 different guitar players. It wound up being 6 or 7, like David Spinoza, Hugh McCracken, Bob Mann, Paul Mesky, Sam Brown, and horn players like Ronny Cuber, Michael Brecker.
Yeah.
So we're talking late 60s. George Young, Frank Zappa, and the trumpet section was Lou Soloff. Randy Brecker, Jon Faddis. Mm-hmm. Barry Rogers, who later was in Dreams. John Pearson. We had some singers, And so we'd gather in, there could be like 5 people showing up, or it could be 25
Right.
at these studios.
That's an all-star band, man. That's heavyweights.
It was, and it was sort of a big jam session. And
Right.
I'd write these little arrangements, and we'd have fun. And in '69, I moved up to the Woodstock area. And right around that time, Steve Gadd and Tony Levin, I happened to hear both of them on a Gap Mangione record in New York that was produced by Chuck Mangione. And I was on the session.
Oh, cool.
I was called, just like I didn't know who the artist was, to be honest. I didn't know Steve or Tony because they were living in Rochester at the time. Long story short, I think I took Steve's phone number, and it was a big band session, like trumpets and horns, and Steve's really sort of jumped out at me. Certainly his playing, and both Tony and Steve eventually moved to Woodstock.
Oh.
And right, so this is like 71 or 2 or somewhere in the early 70s. And we had a group called L'Image, L'Image.
Yeah.
And it was Tony Levin, Warren Bernhardt, who lived in Woodstock. We all lived in Woodstock, myself and Steve. And we used to do some gigs, local gigs, and also some gigs up in Rochester at the Red Creek Inn. And David Spinoza, guitar player, joined the band soon after. All right, so that was sort of like, in a way, the beginning of this idea of these guys, these musicians playing together. And Steve wound up going with the group called Stuff. And in the middle 70s, we sort of went our separate ways, but we all lived in Woodstock. We knew each other. And of course, we'd wind up playing on sessions together. And then around 77, Mike Brecker and Randy, it must have been 77 that they bought the club called 7th Avenue South.
Yeah.
And they asked, and I asked one of them, or they asked me, hey, you want to do a gig up here? So I called Steve. I asked Steve and Michael and Don Grolnick and Eddie. I thought Eddie and Steve, I think, who had played together, perhaps with Chick, or I don't remember. Steve, if you can interview Steve next week, you could ask him.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah.
But I thought that'd be a good combination to play the music that I was writing and Don later on wrote a little later on, which is sort of like some straight ahead, some funk, and that was sort of the beginning of like what became Steps. And we did a bunch of gigs at that club. I don't think we toured at all. I don't think we played anywhere else. But and there was a woman who was a journalist. Her name was Kiki Miyake. I'll never forget her name. And she worked as a journalist for Japan. I think she recorded a little bit of the band and approached the people at Nippon Columbia in Japan. And they offered us a contract to record. Now, I had signed with Warner Brothers. Up until that time, the band was called the Mike Mainieri Quintet. It wasn't called Steps. So I signed with Warner Brothers, and that album you were talking about, Wanderlust, was my first album, which came out, which I recorded in '80, I think. So I couldn't call it the Mike Mainieri Quintet.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'd be sued.
Yeah, sure.
Came up with a name. I don't know who came up with it, but we just picked Steps, not Steps Ahead. And we went to Japan and we recorded, at night we recorded Smoking in the Pit, which I produced
Pit
as
Inn,
a
right?
double album. At the
I
Pit
love
Inn.
that, man.
And during the day, we recorded Step by Step, which was a studio album.
Uncle Bob.
And the guy, right.
I love that tune, man.
That's amazing. Grolnick is just such a classic composer.
Yeah.
And I also love Smoking in the Pit because I think we recorded 3 or 4 nights, so I had to pick the best takes of 2 sets a night and times 4, that's 8,
Yeah,
8
right.
great sets.
Yeah.
So that band, we stayed together up until, I think, for a couple of years with Gad at the drums. And then I think Steve, I don't know if he went on the road or whatever happened, but we were still signed to Nippon Columbia as Steps, and we had one more album to do, and we did that with Peter live at 7th Avenue South, and that was called Paradox.
Right.
And Don played on that album. So it was the same band with Peter playing drums.
Yeah, that's got some smoke and stuff on it too, man.
Right, and it was really hard to pick takes. I remember that on this one Rolnick tune, which I included on a later release as an alternate take. And Peter called me up and said, we should have picked that take the first time, because that was really happening too.
Yeah.
But anyway, long story short, I then needed to record my first album for Warner Brothers, which was called Mike Mainieri, Wanderlust. And, Peter was on it, and Marcus, and Warren Bernhardt, and Rolnick, and Spinoza. There was just a lot of musicians. I don't know if Steve played on that or not, Gad. Perhaps he didn't.
I don't
But
think he
but
did.
there's a tune on there called L'Image on that album, which was one of the songs the group L'Image used to play 5 years before, or 10 years before.
Yeah, that's
We used
cool.
to practice in my barn up in Woodstock, as a matter of fact. So, all right, then when we signed with Elektra Records as Steps, we discovered there was a band in North Carolina that had the same name that was trademarked. And we offered to buy their name, and then when they found out who was in the band, the price went up,
Yeah, right. I'm sure
I
it did.
forget what it was, but exponentially. And so we just decided, okay, let's not spend the money. And we just added a word, which was ahead to head.
Well, there you go.
And that was the first. Now the first 3 albums was not released anywhere except in Japan. So the band was really unknown, except for a few, collectors who were collecting albums from overseas. So actually,
it's
nobody
interesting.
really.
Yeah. I actually remember buying those 3 as imports, and they cost more, but I didn't care because I had to have them, and I still have them. I love them.
Yeah.
The vinyl,
Well, you were probably one out of 50 people that bought one of those albums. Yeah. So
Yeah, I bought. I
nobody
remember this.
knew who the hell we were.
I mean,
As a
Nippon
group, we didn't know. They didn't know Steps.
So the Japanese
Go ahead.
Columbia had the special wrapping around it. The special. Actually, I hated to even open it because it looked so pretty. The way they wrapped it up. They did a nice job. I mean, you paid for that, but it was worth every penny because I got to hear you guys. But I didn't get that stuff until certainly after Wanderlust. That's when I found out about it. I had to do some research. There's no internet. I mean, I don't even know how I found out about those. But I know that I was living in Evanston, Illinois from 82 to 84, 2 years. And the one time I saw the band was at the Park West. The Park West,
Sure.
you guys did a set there, and it was the Paradox band, same band.
Yeah.
Peter, Michael, you, Eddie, Don.
No, was it the Don?
Yeah, Don was there.
Okay, all right. It wasn't Ileani. All right. Maybe it was just right before Don left.
Yeah, it was like right before. Peter told me at a later time. He's like, "Oh yeah, you caught one of the." I think he said you caught one of the last shows Don was with us in that band, and I'm really glad I got
Peter
to
has
see
a better
him one
memory.
time. Yeah.
Good, great. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, he had. I didn't know he had quit Weather Report at the time, so we were just talking. Actually, I got on the stage. Oh, come on up, man! What are you doing in Chicago? You're supposed to be in Syracuse, but I moved out there for a while. So, yeah, it was really that was my first time seeing Michael Brecker too, and I already had about 50 vinyl with him on it, and like from back in the early 70s when I found out about Billy Cobham, and then just all these other things. You all did a lot of session work too, man. The Brecker brothers, Bob Berg, David Sanborn. They were like a lot of them were like a horn section or a saxophone section a lot of times on some of these albums. But I was more interested in the improv but to see him, to see that band, it was just amazing, man. And I hadn't seen Peter play like that either. I saw him with Weather Report, so that was one thing. With Steps Ahead, I felt, well, it was steps ahead. It was just great. So at what point did Eliane come in? Because that wasn't too long after, was it?
It wasn't. It might have been. Peter has a better memory than I do. That's just in general, but even though, but I'm probably about 10 years older. I'm 82. So Peter can remember every hotel we probably, and restaurant that we ate in over those 20 years. But he would know. But
I'll ask him.
He'll know for sure when Don left. And what had happened was, I hope I have this straight. Eddie had met Eliane, and she was putting together a demo. And he said, well, why don't you have Mike Mainieri produce the demo? And I did. And it was, I think, I don't know if she was with Columbia Records. And that's how I met her. Mm-hmm. And I thought she was fantastic. And by then, I think Michael Brecker and all of us had agreed, because we were looking for piano players. And she, of course, she fit the bill. She was perfect. Yeah. And it was, it was it was unusual for us at that time to have a young woman. I think she was about 21 years old. Mm-hmm. Replace any, piano player.
Sure. Excuse me.
So not that we took any flack from him, but it was. I'm glad we did. Let me put it that way. And and she and I have been playing together ever since. We did a tour about 5 years ago with McCaslin. Peter was supposed to do it, but he injured his shoulder. But it was Mark Johnson and Eliane and I, Donnie McCaslin, and oh God, he's gonna kill me. I'll think of the drummer who in a minute.
Steve Smith?
No. It was. Oh man.
Well, while you're thinking about that,
Billy Kilson. I'm sorry. I apologize, Billy. And Billy he's so wonderful. I mean, he just killed the music. Killing. And he had played with me in the late 90s also with Steps Ahead.
All right.
With a different combination with Alex Foster. That was a different Baron Brown and Rachel Z was playing piano.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Yeah. She and Omar got married, didn't they?
They did. Yeah. They were married for quite a while. I was at the wedding.
Oh, cool. Well, I was playing at a festival here. This is sometime in the 80s, probably the mid to late 80s. And I was a band or two ahead of Eliane's band. And I just wanted to get our set done so we could get through and watch her. And it was, I can't remember who was drumming. I think it might have been Joel Rosenblatt. And maybe Mark Johnson. Sure. Mark Johnson. It was a trio. And it was killing. It was beautiful. She was on, she's at the level, man. She's just the best like all of you are. That's fantastic. Is she on the Modern Times album? Who plays keyboards on Modern Times album? That was your first Elektra album, wasn't it?
It's Eliane.
Okay. Yeah, I thought so. Like Pools is on there, and
Oh, wait a minute. Modern Times was that the first or was that the second? That was
well, it might
Warren,
be.
I think. I think it was Warren Bernhardt on Modern
Right.
Times.
I forgot about him. Yeah, yeah. Okay.
Now he was in White Elephant, but
Oh yeah.
so you know, and he was also in L'Image. So
Right.
like it's sort of a circle, right?
And so let me get this straight. So Tony Levin was in L'Image also, and Steve Gadd, right?
Tony, Steve, Warren, and I, and David Spinoza, the guitarist.
Jeez, man, that's not a bad lineup, Mike.
Yeah,
A couple great players.
couple of guys that play pretty good.
So yeah, I remember when that came out. I think Pools. Well, the whole album, I love it. Pools really caught me though. It's just a different kind of groove, and Peter does that thing with the flams. He actually showed me the groove once when we were recording a couple of years ago, and he does this really cool thing on the snare with the rims and this and that, so that it sounds like there's percussion, which
Right.
when he does
Wasn't
the
that
groove,
on the first album though? Wasn't that on the first Steps Ahead album, Pools?
maybe
I don't think it was on Modern Times. I could be wrong.
it's a really good possibility that I don't remember correctly. Just know that.
Grolick wrote that tune. Grolick wrote that tune, and he didn't play on it on the album because Iliani played on it.
Yeah.
But we
I'll-
had
I-
played it. We
I'll
had
talk
played
a-
it live.
I'll ask Peter next week because he's going to be here Friday.
Right.
Now that we can look it up and find out. But that's a great album, man. You got New York's. Is there one called New York City?
Oh, that's New York City, the album. That came out much later in 89, 90.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember the progression of albums.
I can,
And personnel too. I mean,
that I would remember.
okay.
Smoking in the Pit. You ready? Step
Yep.
by Step. Paradox. Steps Ahead. Modern Times.
Yeah.
And then
I cheated. Your memory is very good. I cheated. I looked it up. You are absolutely
Okay.
right. Steps Ahead is the first Warner Bros. album. The Modern Times came out next.
and so we did 3 for Electra. I'm trying to think of the last one. I remember it had Beirut on it.
Is it Magnetic?
Magnetic, okay.
Okay.
And then we did something called Live in Tokyo in '86, which was at the time, it was not a
was a
DVD.
Was it a video?
It was a video.
Yeah, I remember
That-
seeing that
that-
with Steve Smith, Mike Stern, and Brecker was playing the Iwi on a few of those.
He was playing the
tunes.
Iwi and he was playing Daryl Jones, sorry. Daryl Jones was
Jones,
playing
yeah, Daryl.
bass.
Man, yeah, that
Daryl Pitt was our manager.
I remember seeing that video, and then somehow I got a copy of it somewhere. I don't know. Actually, I don't remember how I got it, but I wore that out. And that was was that at the Pit, or was that a different place? That was Japan, wasn't it?
It was Japan, but it was it was a concert. It was a large, concert hall. I can't remember if it was the Tokyo Jazz Festival. It was some
Oh yeah.
much larger venue.
So I just recently learned that Brecker's Iwi stuff was like 2 gigantic refrigerator-sized racks that weighed about 600 pounds in the early days before it went
Oh, yeah.
digital and all that stuff.
No,
I had no idea.
I had a couple of. If you on YouTube, if you look up Brecker and I playing In a Sentimental Mood, I'm playing just keyboard. It's a duet, it's just the keyboards.
I love
You see that rack?
Yes.
I have all that rack of synthesizers because I was MIDI'd up by then. I had started doing that,
Yeah.
from the 60s and 70s. But I had like 3 keyboards, and we had a tremendous amount of gear. Even Steve Smith had, electronic drums and all kinds of stuff on his skins, and
Yeah.
then you could travel with that much equipment without being charged.
It's it's hard to see, but you won't be able to hear if I hold it right up. But this is the.
Oh yeah, I heard the first few notes. I recognized them.
It's a beautiful
Yep.
version of the song, man. I just love it. So it's.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that at the
Brecker
very
and you.
end of that, we would, at the very end of that, because it was in the key of F, we would go immediately into a song called Trains,
Oh yeah, yeah. I
which
remember
was
that
our
one.
encore. That was our encore, and then we'd play the whole tune, walk off stage, and the audience would want well, no, it was our last tune. They'd want an encore, and then Steve would walk out, Smith, play a drum solo, and then we play the last, the last chorus of it, which was like the hook.
Oh, cool.
Bum, bum,
Yeah.
bum, bum, and then Stern would solo for 10 minutes. No, just kidding, Michael.
Yeah, no. It's cool though.
He would just go nuts, and we would go completely crazy on that ending. And it just brings back so many memories, that song, because I've played it with so many different evolutions of the band. I think I've had about 50 or 60 different members that have gone out with me in the past we're going on 40 something years. Just recently, last October, I did a gig at the New Jersey Performance Arts Center with Robbie Coltrane and Billy Kilson,
Excuse me.
myself. So there's been so many different members of the band. Bob Berg was, of course,
Oh
played.
God, yeah. Jeez, man. That's so tragic, man. I loved him. I only saw him once with Miles Davis, but I got to see him, and I'm so glad.
Yeah, we did a few years together.
That's great, man.
And,
So that recording, the video in Japan, it's just, I was hooked, man. A friend of mine, Lee Otis Tifo. How you doing, Lee? A stellar guitar player here. We've probably done hundreds of gigs together. It's good to see you, man. I got to see you in person one of these days. Giovanni's here, who I still owe a phone call to. I promise I will. Swear to God, it's been a busy day. So, that band really struck me. I also found what you do. One of my favorite, I've got to go back from it. I've got two different thoughts in my head. There is a tune on Wanderlust that I also saw you do at the Park West when I was there. I think it's called Flying Colors.
Okay.
Flying Colors, of course. And man, that song still, if I listen to it or think of it for just a half a second, and I've been thinking of it for days now, actually. It's the main song that's been in my head. But I think that's one of the only, not the only, but one of the only times I've ever heard Michael Brecker play soprano sax. He plays soprano on the Wanderlust version.
Actually, I begged him to dust it off.
Yeah, it's like Dexter Gordon might have played soprano once on an album, and it had the biggest, rich, beautiful sound, and then you never heard it again.
Yeah, I was listening to something on YouTube recently where he played soprano sax on somebody's album, and I was like shocked. I was like, man, and he gave me such a hard time. But I said, please play it. He said, all right, I'll do it, but I won't play a solo. And he's because I really suck on the soprano. And then he plays the melody like, like Pavarotti would sing La Nessa Dorma or something. It's just like, what can I say about Michael that hasn't been said?
Well, so I was just thinking about that. That was kind of a random thought. But the other thing, too, is the way the two of you work together, not just how you interacted and the notes, but the feel of the sounds that you were using, because you midied into some cool stuff, and I love it all. And then he had Iwi going on. I mean, he could be playing tenor and you're doing something or whatever, maybe midied up, but it was like two people with sophisticated lady, things like that. It's like a huge orchestra playing, and it's two guys. And I'm amazed. I'm not a music theory guy. I don't know that much about it. I don't remember much. I was lazy and I didn't decide to learn as I could have and should have probably. But I know when I hear something that's special, I know certain modal things and this and that and whatever. But also like the textures and the sounds that can be, well, you know how it is. The sound, a sound can change everything. You guys were like perfect together. Really beautiful stuff.
Thank you. Well, it came together slowly. I had been experimenting with pickups on the vibraphone. I don't know if you can see right behind me here.
Yep, I see it.
There are
Yep.
pickups on every one of these bars in the late 60s and 70s. When I was playing in the 60s, when I was playing with Jeremy Steig and his electric band, with
Oh,
Donald
cool.
McDonald. Yeah, but here we go again. This is like we're playing Cafe A-Go-Go, hippies, we're playing with Tim Hardin, who was a folk musician. We were the backup band. Donald, myself, Warren Bernhardt, the same crew.
Yeah,
Sort of.
yeah.
When I talk about the evolution of steps, it goes back, from when we were in our 20s. I was playing, everybody was playing electric instruments, and I was playing acoustic. And I remember going into the back of the club, and I asked Richie Havens, "Hey man, how did it sound?" And he said to me, "I couldn't hear a note you played." So he said, "Why don't you put a pickup?" He had one of these little hot dot pickups on his acoustic guitar. Why don't you put one of those pickups on every one of your bars? I'm digressing now, but I'll make it short. So from there, I did that, experimented with that. And then I met somebody who, this is in the 70s now, that hooked me up with a MIDI system where I could play with a Moog, which was monophonic. And then from there, you can imagine, just took off. It was polyphonic. And then I started getting into the Oberheim, the MIDI, all of the Moogs instruments, the EMS synthesizer from England. So I had this stack of instruments, and on that First Steps Ahead album for Elektra, I was playing like on pools. I was playing monophonically, but way in the background you could hear a synthesizer.
Yeah, I noticed that, and I love it.
And then of course, Michael, being Michael Brecker, is a genius in so many ways. The technology. I guess I don't know how he got started on the EWI, but it just he went completely. He just took that and took it to another place.
Yeah, I was talking with a little while back, George Whitty. Do you know George?
Yes, sure.
He was talking about he's done a lot of programming for Herbie Hancock. And of course, he worked with the Brecker brothers. He toured with them from early 90s till, quite a while, a couple decades. And he's a techie guy, man. He gets the tech stuff. And I didn't realize how much that Michael Brecker was really into technology. I didn't know how sophisticated the EWI was or is. But of course, now I think you can put it in a Mac, right? And you got everything. But still, there's sophistication with that. And this is a total tangent. I didn't know that Oscar Peterson was a techie. George knew
Herbie
that.
is too. So Herbie and Michael.
Yeah. And Herbie was that's how it started. When I talked to him a while back, he was talking about whatever the new tech is, Herbie's going to have it. He'll be the first adopter of it. And then he doesn't know how to use it, so he calls me.
Well, the last tour they did together, Herbie and Michael, he said in the middle of the tour, Apple had provided Herbie with some new software where they could do surround sound. In the middle of the tour, decided to do surround sound on the some of the concerts, which drove, of course, all of the tech people, their sound engineer, completely crazy. So they were both into it, heavily.
I could, you know, I saw that band. I saw that tour, the last one they did together. I had to go out towards Boston, and I caught them at Symphony Hall. And Terry Lynn was playing drums. Terry Lynn Carrington, Scott Colley, and Roy Hargrove. What a band! And I
Yeah,
actually, so I'm one of those guys. I'm going to admit, I have a bootleg of lots of stuff just for me. Never sold it or anything. No, and I have a recording of that night. And Brecker did this Iwi thing that just astonished all of us. We couldn't believe it. Couldn't believe it.
yeah.
That was around
He was playing it. He was
2006
playing.
or 5. Yeah.
Yeah, he had developed the one that he was playing with, like almost like an accordion, like
Yeah.
this, as opposed to like a saxophone. You know,
Mhm.
the original one was like this, but this was like this,
Yeah, it was wider, isn't it?
wider, and it was
Yeah.
different fingerings and stuff, and then it could play 5 and 6, voices at the same time. And he would program some of them, and I said, "Are you programming all of those chords?" He says, "No, some of them are random." He says, "I love the ones that are just random."
Yeah.
So it would be just like, what the hell? I don't want to use any foul language, Ron, but it's like, what was that? We'd be looking at him, you're just playing this amazing,
So, yeah, in
amazing
fact,
stuff.
I think there is maybe a video of Steps Ahead at Hollywood Bowl, maybe. I know it's Peter, Michael, you, and I don't know who's on bass, but I think Chuck Loeb might have been with you. Is that possible?
Yes, Chuck was with us for a while. Matter of fact, all through Europe, yeah. And so that might have been, it might have been Victor Bailey on bass.
Yeah, that is.
Or the
think
first
it is.
electric bass player that we hired was Tom Kennedy. I don't know
Oh,
if you know
wow,
that.
man. Jeez,
Great
that
bass
guy.
player. We played together with Chuck. One of the last gigs that I played with Chuck before he unfortunately passed away with the WDR about 6 years ago or 5 years ago. Chuck and we put
Chuck,
that
yeah.
band together. Yeah, Steve Smith, myself,
Wow.
Tom Kennedy,
Mm-hmm.
and let's see who played saxophone. Bill Evans. So it was steps ahead with the WDR big
No
band.
kidding. Oh,
And
wow, man.
Mike Benny did all the charts.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you know Mike.
I know of him. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, man, that's cool. So is that on a recorded anywhere?
Yes, there's
WDR?
they did release an album. I think it might have been a double album. And I still call them albums, but it was a CD. They released a CD with Chuck
Okay.
playing an amazing solo on pools, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I met him one time. He was really friendly. I just had a really good vibe from him. And of course, he played his butt off too. Very sad, man. He was way too young to go. And Don too, Don Grolnick. So
Well,
what happened at some point? I know Peter split, Steve Stiff came in, but Michael was still around, and then Mike Stern came in for a while. And I love. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, Mike was on that live in Tokyo, and that was the last. That's the last time that Steps played until '89 when I started a whole new band because Michael started his solo career,
Yeah.
and Stern was in that band, and I think it was Michael's first band, but Adam Nussbaum, and I forget.
Oh
who
yeah,
played.
Adam and Joey Calderazzo, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So I took a break because I was building a recording studio between '87 and '89, which took 2 years of my life. I should be 80 years old, but I'm saying I'm 82.
Yeah, but by the way, man, you look great. You look fantastic.
Oh, thanks. I was lucky. Yeah, so I sort of like bowed out. I was building a recording studio production company, and then in '89, when the studio was finally built, I recorded the first album with the new band, which was called NYC,
Right. I remember that.
for a German label called Intuition, but it was released by Bruce Lundvall, and it wasn't Blue Note then. It was one of the majors. I forget which one. And it was probably the most successful Steps album ever in terms of radio play, because it was a little more commercial. You know,
I remember the album when it came out. I got it, and of course I have it on CD. So yeah, that's interesting history. You know, a lot of Johnny Dugan's here. Hey Johnny, what's up, man? He's an awesome drummer. And Angeles in Mexico. Angelos, hola, ¿cómo está? And Ernesto is Problematica Sophie. So anyways, that's an inside joke.
okay.
So they say I'm problematic, so I say, no, you're problematic. Anyways. Yeah, so who was the saxophone player on that? I never remember the name. Like
His name, yeah, he's a Norwegian saxophonist. His name is Bendik Hafseth.
Right, okay. Yeah. That's great. So at that point, you've got the new band together. You released NYC, and you guys traveled and toured, right?
That band, yes. Well, so did the band with Peter, Michael, and various drummers and bass players. Like the three of us toured Europe quite a bit and Japan. You know, in the, let's see, that would be the 80s.
Yeah.
It was either Victor Bailey or Tom Kennedy. Let's see, Peter played drums most of the time. You have to ask Peter how long we played, we toured.
Yeah, he has a really good memory.
Yeah, he'll remember every. He also remember every. Like I said, he'll remember. Like Warren Bernhardt remember every restaurant and hotel we stayed in.
It's well, you know, one day I was in Toronto and he was working with Diana Krall, and he got in touch and said, "Hey man, I got tickets, man. I got comp tickets and the backstage pass." I said, "Okay, I'm 4 hours away. I'll drive." So I came out, stayed a night, saw the show, went back, met Bob Hurst and Diana and Peter. Was the next morning we went to breakfast somewhere in Toronto. He'll probably know the name of it, and we sat literally for hours, just practically floated away, drinking so much coffee. But you know, he's a real good storyteller. He has so many stories. I was actually laughing so hard that it hurt.
He is.
And he remembers everything. He remembers everything.
He does.
Yeah.
He does.
So
and Gad is also a great storyteller. I mean, Steve has some of the best jokes that I've
Gad
ever heard. Yes. Yeah, when you're off,
Peter
you're
told
off
me
the ad.
at the end of an interview with Peter about 3 years ago. I said, "So what? You know, if you were going to give one piece of advice to to all people out there, musicians especially, what would it be?" He says, "Well, you know, in the words of Dr. Steve Gadd, never pet a burning dog."
That's there you go.
So I got a little glimpse into Steve's humor that way, but that's pretty cool. So okay, so take me just a little further. So how long did Steps stay together? I mean, what albums came out, or what was after the NYC? Did personnel change? What was happening after that?
Wow, the personnel change. Okay, that band, NYC was on the album itself. It was Steve, who had played in the album in '86. So I called Steve to do that. Tony Levin played bass. Steve Kahn played guitar.
Oh yeah.
I think Warren Bernhardt played on that, and Rachel, and of course Bendik Hafseth. But at the time we just called him Bendik. It was just one name. And that band, I toured not with Tony. Of course, he was with Peter Gabriel, and was playing much better paying gigs that I could ever offer him. But let's see, I'm trying to think of. Oh, and Jimmy Tunnell replaced Steve Kahn, who didn't want to go on the road.
Okay.
So the touring band was Bendik, Victor Bailey. Oh no, Jeff Andrews was the first bass player.
Oh yeah. Mhm.
Amazing bass player. So
Yeah.
it was Rachel and Jeff, Jimmy Tuttle, Steve Smith, and myself. It was a sextet.
Oh, cool.
And then we started, let's say then when Victor couldn't do it, I had a list somewhere. I was trying to think of these are not all of them, but the saxophonists that I've used so far: Michael Brecker, Ben Nicofseth, Bill Evans, Alex Forster, Donnie McCaslin, Bob Mincer, Bob Berg,
Oh, jeez.
Robbie Coltrane, and it goes on. There's more, and then pianist Grolnick, Iliani, Warren Bernhardt, Rachel Z, Kenny Kirkland played on one album, Dave Kokoski, Joey Calderazzo. I mentioned Iliani Elias somewhere. I hope I did, but she was number 2.
They're all pretty good,
Yeah, Mike Stern Steve Kahn, Chuck Lowe,
Wow.
Hunter
Yeah.
Bullock played on one album.
Oh,
Eddie Gomez, Victor Kelly, Daryl Jones, Tony Levin, Baron Brown, James Genus, Mark Johnson, Larry Grenadier, Scott Colley, Richard Bona,
Oh man.
drummers Steve Gadd, Peter Erskine, Steve Smith, Rodney Holmes, Billy Kilson, Clarence Penn, Jeff Tain Watts, yada, 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 yada. And Rosenblatt actually did one gig with me too. Joel did.
Yeah, he's a
Did a
great.
gig with me, I think it was in South Africa.
Mm-hmm.
But there are more musicians that have toured with me between that 80s, let's say from 89 to right now.
So there's an album that was recorded in '99, I think. I think it might be called "Holding It Together" or something like that. I don't have that one. I need to find it. That's a steps ahead record, right?
Right. It was called Holding Together.
Holding Together live in Europe.
Right. It was a double CD. It was a live, right. And it was Berg, Peter.
Jeez.
It was Berg, Peter, Iliani, Mark Johnson, and myself.
God. I got to get that one. So now I'm going to go off for a minute. I'm going to say something I say that's important to me because
Is this a commercial?
Yes, it is. It's a good one though, because you're important to me and how much you've influenced, what you've given to me musically. You're being very generous with your time. I find there's a great advantage these days being able to go out and surf around, and for $10 a month you can go on Spotify and hear stuff, and if you like it, but it's great. But I just have to say, I am old school, man, and I believe in buying music. Support the artists. So if anyone watching is interested in buying Steps Ahead, Mike Mainieri, there's so much you've done. You've worked with so many different people, but specifically the work that you've put out, you're in charge of, or you're producing. I say buy it, because
Thank you.
it's so different now, man. I mean, a CD is more like a business card these days, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. But I recorded an album 2 years ago for a foundation that I started for Parkinson's research. So all proceeds go to that, because that's the work I do, is movement disorders.
Wonderful. Yeah.
And traveling and teaching all over the world before COVID. But the thing is I was talking with this, I don't know who, George Whitty or somebody. I ordered 1,000 of them because it was only like $200 more than getting 500, right? You know the deal. So instead of like $900 for whatever, I spent $1,100 or whatever. I got twice as many. So guess how many I have in my room up there? Hundreds, because I think I've only got rid of maybe 150 of them. And John Dugan, you bought one. Thank you very much for your support. I do appreciate it. But you know what? I learned this. I wasn't in the business anymore. I didn't know what's going on. But I'm proud of the CD. Peter plays on it. He's a guest. And Scott Kinsey and Haslip produced it. And Jeff Richman. I don't know if you know Jeff Richman. Great guitarist.
No, I don't.
He's done a lot. He's West Coast. He was in New York back in the 70s. But anyways, it was just a really beautiful thing. But CDs it's different. The whole music thing is different now. So spend the $10 and buy the damn things, folks. There's my plug.
Okay, there you go.
Seriously, yeah.
Now, I try to give away a CD and a tuner that's, well, I could put the camera, but it's sitting up there to one of my niece and nephew who are in their 20s. And they just looked at me like, CDs? We don't have any CDs. And I don't want to embarrass them and mention their names, but they, they just listen to Spotify or something like whatever they, wherever.
It's a nice way to
I
be
could
able to.
not give away. I could not give away $300 or $400 worth of equipment and CDs. They didn't want the CDs, like don't
Yeah.
you want to hear your uncle? Well, we could hear you on Spotify. We could.
You're on YouTube, man. We don't need
Yeah,
anything else.
it's for I
All the
wanna-
albums are on YouTube.
I do want to mention I skipped one guitarist, and that's Adam Rogers, who played with me in the very last concert with Robbie Coltrane and Steve Smith, and just recently. So I don't want to. And also, George Whitty did play on that Magnetic album. I think he did play on one tune because Brecker brought him in to do some programming.
Okay.
So hi, George. Thank you, George.
Yeah, George.
I think I'm right, but ask Peter. he'll confirm it.
I will. Yeah, I'll ask him next week. So what was I going to say? Yeah. Oh, by my new computer, the one I'm on right now, talking with you. I didn't even realize when I bought it in November, there's no CD slot in it. I can't play a CD in this thing. So I had to go to my old computer and import a bunch of stuff, drag it to a external drive, and then put it in here. I mean, I could have done it easier, and it's all good, right? It's now all the stuff's on my phone, and I like that. But times have changed a lot.
Yeah, sure.
That's what's going to happen. It always happens, and it's going to continue to happen. So you just adapt to the best of your ability. But buy music, though. We got to support these people who we love. Scott Hoke is here. He's the one I got this microphone from. Thank you, my brother Scott. We're talking tomorrow morning.
Is that a Sennheiser or?
Yeah, Scott, is this the 441? I think. Yeah, well, right. So we're going to just go off on another little tangent here. Scott Hoke has the voice, and if I'm a car guy, so I love muscle cars. Scott is the host of the Mecum Auto Auction. So if you're ever surfing and you're on TV, looking through a TV, and you see Mecum Auto Auction come up, yes, the Sennheiser 441, you're hearing Scott's voice. He's the main guy on there. The voice you hear, he has the voice. And he also read my audio book of my Parkinson's book that came out last year. So, and he's a bass player. He's a great bass player. I met him through Jimi Haslip because they've been friends for quite a while. But anyways, somehow I got... this is the Stevie Nicks microphone I have. It is the Bob Mintzer mic too, isn't it? I think Bob Mintzer uses the same one. Yeah, this mic kicks butt. I love it, man. 441, good for drums too. Yeah, Michael, I've heard about that. Michael Mallow is on with us.
Right. No, I knew it was a Sennheiser right away.
So, what's been going on since there's an album, I think it's called American Diary. I know that's not Steps or Steps Ahead, but man, that's a beautiful George Garzone, man. That guy. Oh yeah. He kills me. Love that guy. Peter and Mark Johnson.
I love him too because I did an album right before that. The first American Diary was with Lovano. It was all classical pieces that I reinterpreted, I rearranged. It was Lovano, Eddie Gomez, Peter, and myself, just a quartet. Mm-hmm. And then I did American Diary.
I'm sorry, I'm really sorry, I spaced out for a minute. Which album is that?
The very first American Diary album, which is just called Mike Mainieri American Diary, were all classical pieces. Everything, from Coleman to, I even had a piece by, brain freeze, but I'll get back to it. But it was Peter and Eddie and Lovano and myself.
Wow.
And we toured with that band. We toured Europe. And then it was pretty successful. So I recorded another album called American Diary, and I forget there was like a subtitle.
Is that the one that's I'm cheating? I'm looking, but there's American Diary.
It's just funny, I can't remember my own albums. But it was all folks. It was mostly folk songs from different folk songs from different countries.
The Dreamings.
The Dreamings, yes.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And Garzone is on there. Peter also plays drums, and I had so many different guests on that album. There was a wonderful singer from Israel who sings on it. Yeah, her name is Noah.
She's beautiful, man. She's her
beautiful.
voice.
She's awesome, and she's a dear friend.
Mm-hmm.
And she sang on it, and I love that album too. So
yeah.
But we
me
played.
too.
But Garzone and I did a lot of duo tours in Europe together.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah, we did the Italian thing. We did I signed them to my label. He recorded four albums. Albums from my label, NYC Records.
NYC Records, yeah.
Yeah, he did an album with Lovano, which is really amazing. You should pick that one up. It's called Fours and Twos.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's Calderazzo or Kukowski.
I actually think I have that on CD.
Oh man, that's burning. That's burning.
We have a question from Mike Mallow in Toronto. I'm
Hi,
sorry,
Mike.
Montreal.
Montreal.
I'd like to ask Mike if he remembers doing a gig with Steps Ahead at Saratoga Springs, and he believes that Patti LaBelle was in the lineup as well. I think Peter Erskine was playing drums, if his memory serves him correctly. Do you remember doing a gig where LaBelle was on the bill? Saratoga?
Oh, on the bill, not singing with us, you mean?
No, on the bill. Yeah.
Okay, that would have been fantastic.
Yeah, right. A new band.
Probably. I played the Saratoga Springs so many times.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, we did it like 6 years ago with Iliani and McCaslin.
I'll ask Peter.
Ask Peter. He'll remember every lineup. I don't, because I don't know. It just, being the band leader and just who I am, like trying to get everything together, the promoter and this and that, getting the music together, and making sure that the vibes worked. And I would just completely forget. It's kind of a blur. I mean, I've been doing this since I was 14. I was on TV at 14, so the whole thing is
where does the time go,
being
man?
in a rainstorm with pouring rain and the windshield wipers are going real slow. That's where I am right now with remembering all of these gigs and
well, you've done so much, though. I mean, besides the fact, just this little time frame we talked about tonight, all the other projects have been involved during those years and before and after. And I mean, you've done a ton of stuff, man. It's amazing. It's amazing what you've put out there.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I've been really lucky to as a vibraphonist, having not only played on, as an improviser on jazz records and playing, on records with, say, Wes Montgomery, not to drop names, but also I wound up, because of Tim Hardin, I mean, he really taught me a lot, playing vibraphone with a folk musician. It's not like you can play bebop, you're playing something like that. And as a matter of fact, Gary Burton played on Tim Hardin's first album, and Gary knew how to do that. Coming out of the Midwest and Nashville, listening to Nashville, he actually really know how to, accompany a folk singer like Tim.
Yeah.
Who had some great tunes. And so because of Tim, I really credit him and that band, and playing up in Woodstock with a lot of folk musicians who lived in Woodstock and jamming with them. I wound up playing with Don McLean on American Pie and Paul Simon, cool. And producing Carly Simon, and I was on so many pop albums, Billy Joel, and on and on and on. So the thing about that Steps band, when you think about Steve and Peter and then Brecker, all right, Michael Brecker and well, those guys, it's not just the Steps, but that group of musicians could, Michael could play with Chick and Herbie and then walk through the hallway in Atlantic Records and somebody drag him in and say, hey, can you play, a 16-bar solo on Chaka Khan's record, and just walk in and know exactly what to play and make the record. Yeah. I mean, actually, they didn't know what to do there. Spinoza was like that. And Gad, on Asia, that drum solo. Thank you very much, Steve. I listened to it the other day. Somebody, a doctor friend of mine, Bob Ward, sent it to me, and just as he knew I knew it. He said, "Hey, remember this?" And I listened to it again, and I think it was probably the first take. You'll have to ask Steve, but I wouldn't be a bit surprised.
I'll ask Peter. I'm just kidding. So, but so I was talking with do you know John DeChristopher used to be at Zildjian? He was like he's
sounds familiar now.
John DeChristopher was at
window
Zildjian.
Wipers. Let me try to.
Well, he was talking, and I didn't know about it, so he told me about this. So we were doing a thing like this a couple of weeks ago, and he was talking about how on YouTube, if you go to his channel, John DeChristopher, he's got this thing like live from my drum room or something, and it's just kind of like a hang. So he's got Rick Marotta and Steve Gadd and him talking, recently, and they were talking about Asia. They were talking about the song, and actually Steve really didn't want to talk about it, but the other two did, and they were talking about how kind of at the time, because it's pop music sort of, that solo was really pushing the envelope of sort of being out a little bit for the target audience.
Right.
But it also brought in all these other people who are, I don't know anybody who's offended by that solo. And of course, Wayne is on it too, man. And Wayne did some really cool stuff on that. And it's really cool how they were able to bridge together, like with the band in general, but that song really brought a lot of worlds of personalities, and it brought a lot to get musically, stylistically.
It did. That minor 11th chord at the end, bop, 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 whatever the rhythm was. I think it was something minor 11th, 13th or something. It was really hip.
My friend Scott Hoke says Wes Montgomery is from Indiana. Indianapolis, Scott? Scott's in Indianapolis. Scott lives in Indiana. Yeah, the whole album age is beautiful. Michael saying that, Michael Mello. I have one more question I want to ask, and we should do this again sometime when you have time.
Sure.
If you don't mind. I mean, people enjoy hearing this stuff.
Fun.
So I'm curious, because my first big influence when I was a kid, my dad came home, it's 1966 or 7. Buddy Rich had just released Big Swing Face, and then the other one recorded, I think the same night, but 2 different releases of West Side Story and all that. So then he took me to see him when I was 9, and that sealed the deal. I had to be a drummer. And you played
You're not
with
alone.
You played with Buddy, and you recorded some stuff with him too. And what was that experience like working with Buddy?
It was fantastic. I mean, I was lucky enough to play with the quintet, sextet, sometimes octet, never with the big band. Thank God, because that was like the 70s, and it got a little nuts. Everyone knows about the bus tapes or whatever they were. But when did I start with it? Like 59, something like that. So it was, for me, it was quite an experience, because I was just a kid and who had to audition live with him. One of his best friends was a drummer that I used to use on local gigs in the Bronx and wherever I was playing when I was from when I was 17, 18, and 19. His name was Pete Volo. And he and Buddy were friends, and Buddy used to come up to the Bronx to have a good, nice Italian meal. And Pete would say, you got to hear this kid, Mike Mainieri, that I'm playing, but you got to hear him. And Buddy said, listen, I don't need another vibes player, you know, because I had one, and Terry Gibbs, and it's a pain in the ass schlepping the instrument around. And so he finally convinced him after maybe like a couple of years of begging him. And I forget where it was, whether it was the Village Gate or one of those clubs. And long story short, my father brought the vibes down and in his station wagon, and I set it up, and I'm waiting to go on. And first set's, and then the third set, Buddy gets up and says something like, there's this kid in the audience that thinks he can play the vibes, you know, or something like that. And it looks like he's wearing his father's suit. And so he said, all right, you know, on this next break, come up and set up your vibes. And I get up there and, you know, nervously set up this big Musser vibraphone I was playing at the time. And then the first tune was Cherokee at a ridiculous tempo. And he said, okay, go. And about 32 choruses later, the audience stood up and gave me a standing ovation, and I had the gig. And a week later, yeah. And the funny part about it, I don't know if you have time.
Oh, I have time.
I was playing nightly right down the street from Birdland at a Chinese restaurant called the China Door. Now, some of the old cats would remember this place. It was upstairs on the second floor. And you had to play from 12 in the afternoon to 6, and then from 8 until 3 in the morning.
Holy crap. Wow.
To dig this, I was playing drums, and I was playing, the leader was a piano player, and it was piano, sax, and drums, no bass. And we would have to play behind these weird acts, like vaudeville acts, that like, you know, those long sticks with the saucers on top.
Yeah,
and
right, yeah.
So my gig was like playing drums, working the lights with my left hand. And the piano player would always play in 2 tempos. It was either one tempo with his hands and another tempo with his foot. And so all night long, he would scream at me and say, watch my foot, watch my foot. And then when I'd play with his foot, he'd say, watch my hands, watch my hands. And I'd go home reeking, you know, smelling Chinese food all the way back to the Bronx, like 3 subways back to the Bronx. And I was like at my wit's end. You know, I did that gig, I forget how many months of torture. And then a week later, I'm at Birdland playing opposite probably Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers with Buddy Rich.
Wow.
So it was rags to riches kind of story. But I enjoyed playing with Buddy. I don't have, you know, I think he sort of adopted me. He took me under his wing. I did most of the arrangements. I used to drive his crazy sports cars everywhere. You know, he used to go.
Yeah, he's a car guy too. He was.
Yeah,
he
had a Gold Wing. He had a Jaguar. He had an Austin Healey. Yeah. And I'd go everywhere with him. He would take me to, like, you know, with him with Lenny Bruce and Mel Torme and Jerry Lewis and Sinatra and the whole crowd. So, you know, I had a good time for about 5 years. I mean, I was, you know, I was a young
really
guy
cool.
sewing my oats and just having a good time with it. And of course, playing opposite Miles and, like, you know, all over the country, playing opposite Basie and all these people that, you know, we'll never hear again.
What a great time period that was too, that era. There have been many great eras, but that one was really special in its own way. The, you know, late 50s, late 50s, 60s, that transition that a lot of people made, a lot of musicians made. You know, this is another short tangent. I got to know Stan Getz's daughter, Beverly, a while back, quite a few years, there maybe 12, 13, 14 years ago. We ended up hanging out on a fairly regular basis. Just on my way to New York, we'd stop and have like Mexican food at this one place near where she lived at the time. One day she calls me, she says, Carl, you got to come tomorrow. Be here. Kathy Rich is going to be here. We're going to talk about her dad. So, so I did. I took everything I had. I took it off. I had subbed out a gig, and I went out there. and we spent hours with Bev Getz and Kathy Rich talking about their dads and how they used to hang out,
Well, here's
and used to
one.
bust chops on
Yeah.
each other and drive fast cars, and then they got into talking about Buddy being sometimes neurotic, but his intention was, I want a damn good band. You have to play your ass off because I'm going to play my ass off every night. And the unfortunate thing is that the bus tapes painted this dark picture of him. Now, you worked with him. I just met him a few times, and he was always really friendly, always a gentleman. And
I had a great time with him.
yeah, I've heard that from like everybody I know who's worked with him. Pretty much says the same thing.
I babysit for Kathy in Las Vegas when
No way, really?
when Buddy Marie went out. Yes, I was
wow,
living
that's
at the
so
house.
cool.
I was living at the house with my first wife and my like 6-month-old at their pad in Las Vegas. So hi, Kathy.
That's funny.
Uh,
Yeah, I haven't seen her. I think she got married and moved to Chicago or something. But
absolutely no regrets because we did a State Department tour that took us, and I'll end with this,
sure.
to Afghanistan.
Wow.
I was just a kid. Afghanistan, all of India, Nepal, Bangkok,
Jeez,
Indonesia,
cool.
Thailand, Vietnam, Laos. I'm going to skip several countries. I'm sure Singapore, Hong Kong. And then we ended the tour. I'm skipping a few countries. We ended the tour playing for the Shah of Iran. Every country we would play either for the king or the queen or dictator. It was like part of a State Department tour. You showed up, you played, and then you'd play in some smaller cities also. But also I played the first gig. One of the first gigs I did with them was in Brazil, in São Paulo. So I got to travel, all over the world and all over this country and every jazz club, because then you could work like 50 weeks a year. Or
Sure.
he could.
Yeah, there's and I won't take long here, but if anyone is curious, I know there are recordings. You can probably find them somewhere these days of you with Buddy, but also there's on YouTube. There's from the Playboy Club, Penthouse or whatever. Do you remember that?
Oh,
I remember that.
I remember that.
Yeah,
I remember,
you won't be able to. I have the volume down, but that's Mike Mainieri, Buddy Rich, and who else was on the band? Do you remember? Was
Sam
it
Most? Sam Most.
Oh yeah, there he is, right there.
Flute.
Yeah.
Johnny Morris was playing piano on that one. It wasn't John Bunch.
Okay.
It was Wyatt Ruther was playing bass, and that was
so
right
cool.
before. There was only one Playboy club at the time. That I remember. I have no. And I think that's right before we went to Afghanistan, Kabul. Our first gig was in Kabul.
That's great. That's so fascinating to me. Well, listen, I don't want to hold you up, and I just really appreciate you agreeing to meet with me and talk and share some of this history and these stories. And I can't thank you enough, Mike. You've really been a big influence to me.
Thanks. I'm glad we finally got this together. It took a few.
It took a minute.
Yeah, it took us a minute to get it.
It took a New York minute. Yeah. No,
Thank
it was.
you.
And thanks. I really appreciate it, and we have quite a few people on watching, and thank you everyone for tuning in.
Yeah, and just check with Peter and Steve. They definitely will remember better memories than I have.
Yeah. I'll. I know I'm speaking with Peter next Friday at. I think it's 1:00 our time. Steve, I don't have on the schedule, but Steve Gadd's going to be pretty soon, early February.
I'm playing on an album with Steve right now.
Oh yeah.
It's an album by a bass player by the name of Scott Petito, who owns a studio up in Saugerties. It's an amazing studio, really good bass player, writer, producer, and I played on several of his albums, and some of the Michael Franks things that he's produced and other artists.
Yeah.
Steve is on it. I think who else? Mincer's about I haven't heard Mintz's part yet.
Okay.
I've heard Steve's part, I've heard Rachel Z's part, and Scott's bass. And so anyway, I thought I'd
cool.
give Scott a plug.
Oh,
Hi,
yeah.
Steve.
Scott
You
Petito,
sound-
right?
Yeah, and there's a really great ending of Steve on this album. Steve playing a solo, a la Asia, where there's like these little rhythms going on, and Steve goes up and plays this great solo. So
That's great. Yeah, Peter's 1 o'clock next Friday. He'll be here. So, yeah, I'll ask him. I'll ask him everything. So, anyways, look, again, I want to thank you. Thanks everyone for watching and tuning in. Really glad you could hang out and just hear the chat. Mike, we'll sign
All right.
off.
Peace.
Again, I say thank
All
you.
right,
Let's
same
stay
here.
in touch. Maybe we'll do it again down the road. Do part 2 and talk about something else.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Great.
All right. Stay safe,
right,
man.
man.
Stay healthy. Okay. You're
Okay,
looking
you
great.
too.
Keep healthy.
Feeling great.
We need you.
right.
Okay.
Thank
See you later, man.
Thank you. All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.